Okay, tell me if you've heard this one before. Notre Dame is heading to play a team in the ACC on the Atlantic coast, and there's a hurricane not too far off in the distance. But this time, I think the Irish are up for the challenge.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Irish. Today is Wednesday, September 6th, and thanks as always for making this your first listen of the day. I'm the host, Tyler Wojciak. I graduated from Notre Dame in 2018, and I've been podcasting about the football team since 2020. I'm also a producer covering college football for Fox Sports, and I'm really excited about today's show because it's finally time to talk about Notre Dame's first big test of the 2023 season as they hit the road for their first true road game that will take place on Saturday against the NC State Wolfpack in Raleigh, North Carolina. So today, I'm going to go over the key matchups that I think will ultimately decide the outcome of this game, and then I'll get into what I'm looking to see from the Irish in this matchup, and then I'll give out some predictions at the end. And right now, Notre Dame is favored by 7 on FanDuel, and they've got the over-under set at 50.5. So the experts in Vegas are expecting Notre Dame to win by a final score that's something close to 28-21. And this is the first time that Notre Dame has played in Raleigh since the disastrous game in 2016 that was quite literally played in a hurricane, Hurricane Matthew. And I'm starting to think Raleigh is cursed because there's another hurricane, Hurricane Lee, that's apparently forming in the Atlantic, and Raleigh might get hit with some of the residuals this Saturday. It looks like there's a 50 to 60% chance of thunderstorms on Saturday. The game will be played at noon Eastern time, so we'll just have to wait and see. It could be a rainy game once again, and right now I don't really know who that favors, to be honest with you. But either way, rain or shine, I do expect this to be a difficult test for this Notre Dame team. And honestly, like many games, I think this game is going to be decided by the quarterbacks. And this one in particular feels that way because both of these quarterbacks, Sam Hartman for Notre Dame and Brennan Armstrong for NC State, have dealt with extreme highs and extreme lows in their college careers so far. So really, it's going to be a matter of which version, or versions, I should say, of these quarterbacks shows up on Saturday. Let's look at Sam Hartman, who is 1-2 in his career against NC State. He's thrown 6 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. In last year's game for Wake Forest, Sam Hartman threw for 397 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions in a 30-21 loss at Carter Finley Stadium in Raleigh. 2 of those picks went to guys who will start for the Wolfpack on Saturday. So I don't expect that NC State defense to really be fearful of Sam Hartman, at least at the start of the game. Hartman was also sacked 4 times in that game. But for context, Sam Hartman threw the ball 48 times in that game. The Demon Deacons had 17 total rushing yards on 25 attempts. So it was literally all on Hartman to try to win that game. In 2021, Sam Hartman and the Demon Deacons won a shootout against the 16th ranked NC State Wolfpack. But his stat line was kind of all over the place in that one as well. He finished 20 of 47 passing for 290 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. But most importantly in that game, he did lead Wake Forest to a 13-play, 75-yard touchdown drive late in the fourth quarter to go up 10 with less than 2 minutes to go and effectively put the game away. So point being, Sam Hartman has had some roller coaster moments against NC State during his decade-long college career. So he knows that this game presents a big challenge, but also a great opportunity. It's also a great opportunity for Brennan Armstrong, the new quarterback at NC State, to return to form because Armstrong was one of the best quarterbacks in the entire country in 2021 when he was leading the Virginia Cavaliers offense under Robert Anae, who is now the offensive coordinator at NC State. They're reunited after Armstrong had a simply disastrous season in 2022 under new head coach Tony Elliott. The stat comparison is crazy. In 2021, Armstrong threw for nearly 4,500 passing yards. He had 40 total touchdowns and just 10 interceptions. In 2022, that passing yard number was literally cut in half. He only had just over 2,200, 13 total touchdowns, 7 through the air, 6 on the ground, and he had 12 interceptions. So it just went off a cliff that season. Now, part of that had to do with the fact that Virginia's offensive line was horrid, terrible. No good. Very bad. So Armstrong was kind of forcing it, but still his interception numbers were bad. And there were times when I was watching some of the Virginia games last season, we were like, who is this? How is that Brennan Armstrong? How is that the guy that at one point in 2021, there was a time when people were talking about him as like a dark horse Heisman candidate. But unfortunately, Notre Dame was not able to play him that season because Armstrong had taken a beating over the course of that year. And I think in that Notre Dame game, he was dealing with a bunch of different injuries. So we haven't really seen him on the field against Notre Dame. In his first game at NC State, Armstrong looked more like his 2021 self than 2022, but it wasn't like his stat sheet is going to jump out at you or anything crazy like that. He finished 17 of 26 passing for 155 yards through the air, but he did add 96 rushing yards and had 2 rushing touchdowns in that game. And the biggest similarity here compared to what he was doing at Virginia is that offense is only going to go as far as Brendan Armstrong goes because he has to do everything. He was their leading rusher. He's the quarterback. He's trying to make all these different plays. So if Notre Dame is able to contain him, they'll be in great shape because he was out there. Kind of looked like he was forcing it a bit at times. Honestly, when he didn't even have to, he was trying to make plays constantly. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But this guy's a good football player. If you look at him athletically, if you did the combine test, like I don't think any of his numbers are going to blow you away, but he's just a really good football player. One of those guys who you just watch him and you're like, that guy gets it. That guy, for whatever reason, is tough to bring down. He's faster than you might think. He's might not have the fastest 40 time in the world, but yet he's running past guys and guys can't bring him down. So that's sort of what Notre Dame is going to be dealing with in Brennan Armstrong. But if they cut off the snake of the head, or they cut off the head of the snake, then Notre Dame will be fine. But Notre Dame, in a similar way, is only going to go as far as Sam Hartman will take them. And so far, Sam Hartman has been nearly perfect, and Notre Dame, as a result, has been nearly perfect. So I really think this game is going to be won by one of these two quarterbacks, and I have a lot more faith in Sam Hartman. Like I was saying, he's been nearly perfect so far, but he also hasn't dealt with much adversity at all during his time at Notre Dame. And I do expect him to deal with some adversity on Saturday. It's going to be a rowdy crowd. I know it's going to be a noon kickoff, but believe me, NC State, they're going to get after it. They're going to be ready to go in this one. And I don't really take too much away from NC State's performance against UConn because, one, it's the season opener. As we know, a lot more often than not, teams come out in their first game and are a little bit sluggish. They're not operating quite at the same level as Notre Dame was doing against Navy, but that's rare, and that's great for Notre Dame. Maybe they can keep that up, but usually teams don't come out week one and just are dominating. And also, the game was played in East Hartford, Connecticut. I lived in West Hartford for 2.5 years. The place doesn't scream college football town, okay? I know that Jim Mora's got things going better for UConn, but I don't think it was the lively atmosphere that we're going to see on Saturday. So the NC State players are going to be jacked up. They've also got a good coach in Dave Doran, who's been around the program for 11 years, and NC State has been really, really good at home. I think they've only lost one home game in their last 19 games, so it's going to be a tough one for the Irish. But I also think it's a great opportunity for Sam Hartman to showcase his leadership ability because even though the team has sort of rallied around him, they've elected him captain at this point, so clearly he's a leader on the team. He hasn't really had to come in on the day of the game and really get the guys to rally around him, and he's going to have to do that in this one because I think for the first time all season, there's going to be a point in the game where you're like, okay, this outcome is kind of in jeopardy. Maybe it happens in the second half. Maybe it happens in the fourth quarter. I don't really know, but I do think that there's going to be a point where Sam Hartman is going to have to get in the huddle, get his guys to play up to his level, and then hopefully lead Notre Dame to a victory. There's also a chance that he struggles a little bit. It's possible. He's certainly had bad games in his career. He's thrown for a lot of interceptions at NC State. Granted, now he's going to have a much more balanced attack around him with better talent, but still, it's possible. And if that does happen, how is he going to respond in these moments? Is he going to crumble? Is he going to let the interceptions mount? Or is he going to step up and make the plays that he needs to when he needs to and lead Notre Dame to victory? These are all questions that we knew were going to have to be answered at some point this season, and I believe we'll at least start to find out on Saturday. And I'm very excited to see how Hartman handles it all because if he goes out and dominates again, that's going to help him build even more confidence for when it's time to go up against the truly elite teams like Ohio State, like USC, and like Clemson, because this is the first big test of many this season for Sam Hartman and the Notre Dame roster, and I can't wait to see how it plays out. All right, coming up next, we're going to go over some of the key matchups in this one, and I'll explain why I'm at least a little nervous about Notre Dame's pass rush. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So, the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Before we get back to the game, I want to remind you guys about a new show we launched here on the Locked On Podcast Network called Locked On College Football Kickoff, which airs live every Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on every Locked On College YouTube channel. College Football Kickoff will cover everything going on in the sport and go in-depth like only Locked On can, including insight analysis from our stable of college hosts covering their team every day. Okay, so the first matchup that I think is going to be crucial to Notre Dame's success in this one is Notre Dame's running game going up against NC State's run defense. NC State did give up 160 rushing yards to UConn, but I think that's a little bit skewed because 71 of those yards came on one play. If you take that out of the equation, NC State held UConn to just 89 yards on 25 attempts, which averages out to 3.5 yards per carry. Not great, not terrible, but not as bad as the initial 160 rushing yard stat might suggest. This is more in line with how they performed last season because last year they were really good at stopping the run. They led the country in stuff percentage, which is when you hit the ball carrier at or behind the line of scrimmage, and they did that 28.5% of the time. So they were in the backfield early and often, and they actually held their opponents just 100.6 yards per game last season, which finished 11th in the entire country. They did lose some key players, though, like linebackers Drake Thomas and Isaiah Moore. They're both in the NFL. But overall, this is a veteran group. They added some grad transfers to fill in some holes on the defense behind the guys who graduated. So it's a veteran group, and none more veteran than their linebacker Peyton Wilson. He's number 11. He is also a sixth-year senior, much like Sam Hartman, and he led the team in tackles last week against UConn with 10, including 1 TFL. And he's just a really solid player. He also had a pick late in the game, which all but sealed it. He finished with 12.5 TFLs last season, so he's going to be a problem in the middle of that Wolfpack defense. Savion Jackson is their defensive end. He's a good player, very talented, but he did miss the UConn game with an injury. He's expected to start on Saturday, but he was also limited to just 7 games last season with an injury then, so I'm not sure if he's going to be 100% and ready to go on Saturday. Obviously, Notre Dame hasn't really had much trouble running the ball so far this season as a team. They're averaging 6.3 yards per carry with 5 rushing touchdowns, but obviously that's against far inferior competition than what they'll be dealing with on Saturday. So the line, and specifically guards Pat Coogan and Rocco Spindler, they're going to be tested in their third career start. They were really impressive in the season opener against Navy. I thought maybe with all the blitzes that they'd likely be facing against that midshipman defense that they might struggle a little bit in their first start. That wasn't really the case. They actually struggled more against Tennessee State, who's an FCS team in Game 2 than they did in Game 1. But, part of that might just be the hangover, I guess, for lack of a better term, of coming back from Ireland and playing a team a week later and dealing with the defensive line at Tennessee State that really fought their butts off, at least early on in the game. So we know that offensive lines usually take a couple games to gel, and we're kind of at that point now where we're going to have to start and see what is this Notre Dame offensive line made of. We know that Joe Alt is a stud. Blake Fisher didn't have his best game against Tennessee State. I expect him to rebound in this one. But the interior of that offensive line is going to be crucial to Notre Dame's success in this one. And if they're able to get a push off on the ball at the line of scrimmage and they're able to control that NC State defensive line, then I have full faith in Notre Dame's stable of running backs that they'll be able to run behind them. Which leads me to another question. How is Notre Dame going to rotate their running backs? Because right now, if you look at the way that the carries are distributed, Wojciak Estime is by far and away the leading rusher. He's had 29 carries. Second behind him is Jabron Payne, who has 12. Jeremiah Love has 9. Jadarian Price has 6, and Devin Ford has 2. But also, those running backs have been involved in the passing game quite a bit as well. I wouldn't be surprised if Notre Dame just rides Estime in this one and they give him like 20, maybe even 25 carries. 25 would seem like a lot, but if he really gets rolling and he's getting 5 to 7 yards every time he runs the ball, then just feed the big man. You know what I mean? Like, make a statement and bully that Wolfpack defense. But then again, like, Dylan McCullough always talks about the fact that he is a 5-headed monster, and although this week it's going to be 4 because Devin Ford is going to be out in this one. Maybe it's an opportunity to try some new stuff that we haven't seen a whole lot of. Jeremiah Love got his first touchdown, and we saw the type of speed and elusiveness he had or has on that first touchdown. So I don't know how they're going to rotate. I expect to see a heavy dose of Wojciak Estime, but I think the rotation will probably slim down from like 4 guys getting reps to 3 and really lean on that one being Wojciak Estime. So I'm going to go ahead of myself and put a prediction down right now. I think Estime gets 2 touchdowns in this one, and he's going to have to protect the ball as well, especially if it's raining, which it might. He fumbled against Navy. He had a couple fumbles last year. It's something that I'm concerned about. Some people aren't as concerned as I am, but he's got to protect the football, especially if he's going to be the bell cow back for Notre Dame, and they're going to really lean on him in games like this. So that's going to be something to look out for. If the field's a little bit wet, how does Wojciak Estime hold up? We'll have to wait and see. Overall, though, I do like Notre Dame in this matchup. I think the loss of Thomas and Moore for NC State is going to start to show itself in this game against a far more balanced attack against Notre Dame because they aren't going to be able to just stack the box, because if they do, well, then Sam Hartman is just going to pick them apart. He's been great against the blitz so far this season. On the other side of the ball, I'm really going to be looking at NC State's passing game versus Notre Dame's pass defense. NC State, they do not have a good rushing attack, at least on design runs. They were a little bit better against UConn, but last year they finished 110th in rushing yards per game with 113.7 yards, and they also only averaged 3.35 yards per carry. That was tied for 115th, so they were not very good last year. They're a little bit better this year, and they also added Brendan Armstrong, who is a very capable runner. He was their leading rusher last week, but still, I don't expect them to be running the ball on Notre Dame's defense. So I think the bigger focus for Notre Dame is going to be at stopping the passing game. And this puts a lot of pressure on NC State, and particularly Brendan Armstrong, to be effective and get the chains moving. They didn't really push the ball down the field a ton against UConn. They only finished with 155 passing yards. They did lose their top 2 receivers from last season, but they really like Kevin Concepcion. He is number 10. He led the team in receiving yards against UConn, 4 catches, 36 yards. He's only a sophomore, but they really like him and his potential. But for me, I just think this is a great chance for Notre Dame's secondary to finally be able to flex its muscles a little bit. I'm sure the corners and the safeties are chomping at the bit to get out there in this one, because the first 2 games, let's just be honest, they were pretty irrelevant to the team's overall success because they're playing a gimmick offense against Navy and they're running the ball every single time. So they're more just in there to tackle and not cover guys. And then at Tennessee State, yes, they were in coverage, but it's Tennessee State. Those receivers aren't even close to the level of talent. They don't have close to the level of talent that Notre Dame's cornerbacks have. And Notre Dame's defense was in the backfield quite a bit. They only had 1 sack, but they were in the backfield 10 times with quarterback hurries. So this is their first real test. And we talked a lot about in fall camp about how Notre Dame's corners might be the most talented position group on the entire roster. Well, now they'll have a chance to showcase that going up against real competition. Safeties as well. Xavier Watts has been a pretty solid playmaker so far. He's going to have another great opportunity in this one. Fortunately, Antonio Carter had his targeting penalty in the first half of last week's game, so I think he'll be much more part of the rotation this week than he has been in the last 2. So he's going to get some action this one, and it's going to be really interesting to see how that Notre Dame secondary holds up, because if they can lock up the receivers downfield and force Armstrong into basically running around for his life trying to make plays, then I think Notre Dame has far and away enough speed and athleticism to contain Armstrong for 4 quarters. So those are the 2 main matchups I think are going to have the biggest impact on the game outside of the quarterbacks, obviously. But that's pretty much it for the scouting report on NC State. So coming up next, I'm going to explain what I'm hoping to see from the Irish in this one, and then I'll give out my score prediction. Okay, so as for what I'm hoping to see from Notre Dame, as much as Sam Hartman is going to be the focus in this one, I really want to see Notre Dame's offensive line take control and really assert themselves as the unit we all think they can be. And I'm not just talking about a really good offensive line. I'm talking about like a Joe Moore Award level offensive line, because they have the talent and they haven't really had the opportunity yet until now. So if they dominate the line of scrimmage and they give Sam Hartman time, Notre Dame should be able to pull away probably pretty early on in this game, because if they're dominating the line of scrimmage, Notre Dame is going to be able to run the ball, and when NC State brings those defenders up, Sam Hartman is just going to throw it right over top of them. So that's really going to be key for me. Is it fair to expect a complete demolition over a pretty quality defensive line? Probably not to expect that, but if Notre Dame did it, I wouldn't be surprised. And if they do that, it's going to make me feel way more confident about what that team, and particularly that offense, can accomplish the rest of the season when they start to go up against even better defensive fronts like Ohio State. And I was going to say Clemson, but I don't know. They didn't look that great this week against Duke. I kind of feel like an idiot for picking Notre Dame to lose to Clemson. I said they'd go 11-1 with the lone loss going against the Tigers in Death Valley. Maybe that'll happen, but they didn't look that great in their season opener, to say the least. But back to the NC State game. I want to see Notre Dame convert on a deep shot because they really haven't. Like, yes, Jaden Greathouse caught that post for a touchdown against Navy. That was a good play. But I'm talking Sam Hartman stepping back and just letting it rip downfield. That's what I want to see. We know he's capable of throwing a perfect deep ball. We just haven't really seen it yet in a Notre Dame uniform. And yes, they've had some big plays in the passing game, but you look at their two longest passes last week, they were dump passes to the running back, who then they just, Jadarian Price and then Jabron Payne, they just took him to the house. So that doesn't really count either. So I'm hoping to see Sam Hartman let it rip downfield a little bit in this one. Obviously, if it's a hurricane or even just a thunderstorm, that's going to be a little bit harder to do, but I'm hoping to see it because we just really haven't. And it would be great if Tobias Merriweather could step up. I don't have any like super strong opinions on Tobias Merriweather right now. Some people are already saying he's a bum and that the freshman should be taking his reps. Other people are fighting for his life. My boy Greg Flamong is going to war for him on Twitter all the time, so shout out Greg. I'm sort of somewhere in the middle. I know that Merriweather's out there a lot. He's been fighting. He's been blocking his ass off, if we're just being honest, and I think that's a big reason why he's still out there. So he has not really been effective in the passing game yet. It's not even debatable. Look at his stats. But I don't think people should just cut him off right now and they're ready to just push him to the side. And then there's a lot of people who are just waiting for him to break out. I think a lot of this had to do with the expectations he had going into last season, where people were like, he should play now. And now that he's starting, we haven't really seen him make those big plays yet outside of the one last year in the Stanford game. But we have to be a little patient. He's still very young. He's still learning the position. But if he takes too long, then those freshmen behind him might actually start to pass him up. We saw Rico Flores catch the first catch of the game last week, so he wants to get on the field more. And if Merriweather's not getting it done, then that could happen. But I'm not ready to say that yet. I do think Merriweather comes through with a big catch in this one, so that'll be my first prediction. Defensively, I really want to see Notre Dame get after Armstrong in the pass rush. He's going to be able to escape sometimes. That's going to happen, and that's fine as long as it doesn't happen repeatedly. We saw a little bit of what Notre Dame's pass rush could be against Tennessee State, but I don't put too much stock into that because it's an FCS school and their offensive line is objectively terrible. Not as bad as I thought they were going to be, but still not good. So this is a great chance for the D-line and really the linebackers to make life hell for Brennan Armstrong if they can get in the backfield every play. Al Golden, we've been hearing that he's been dialing up a lot more blitzes. That's sort of one of the benefits of him being around for a full year now and not just like trying to learn all the players and learn how to implement the system. Last year, when he got hired pretty late before spring practice, now he's had time with the entire team, and he's been able to add a lot more blitzes. And he was blitzing a lot in spring ball and in fall camp, and maybe we'll get to see some of those exotic blitzes against NC State that they aren't prepared for, because that's one thing you learn in the NFL, man. You learn how to blitz, and you learn how to blitz when the defense is not expecting, or at least from guys who they don't see it coming from. So I really would like to see Notre Dame get after the passer a little bit because you need an effective pass rush to get to where Notre Dame wants to go. We haven't seen it yet. Granted, they haven't had a lot of opportunities. But again, so many position groups have big opportunities Saturday, and I would count the defensive line and the linebackers in this one to get after the quarterback and make some plays. Lastly, I want to see how Notre Dame responds to adversity. Like I said, I think it's going to happen. I do not expect a blowout. I think this game to be in the balance in the second half, and that's actually going to lead me into my score prediction. I like the Irish to win 31-20. They cover the overhits, and it would be a good win for Notre Dame if they were able to beat this NC State team by 11 points. I think this is going to be a back-and-forth battle in the beginning of the game, but eventually Notre Dame is going to pull in the way in the second half because things should come easier, especially for the Notre Dame offense as the game goes on. NC State is certainly capable of making some big plays, courtesy of Brennan Armstrong, but if that's what they're going to rely on, if they're getting stuffed over and over again and then they just make some big play or make some acrobatic catch, or Brendan Armstrong just eludes a couple defenders and makes a big play, okay, you can live with that as long as you don't let it happen over and over again. But I think Notre Dame is going to be able to get more consistent advantages on the ground and with Sam Hartman than NC State because they have a better line and they just have better talent around him. So the crowd's going to be rocking. At one point or another, Notre Dame might have their backs against the wall to an extent. I'm not saying it's going to be like they have the ball with 2 minutes to go and they're down, but there's going to be some times, I think, in the second half we're like, all right, Notre Dame has to make a play here to win this game, and I think they will. This is when having a 6-year senior quarterback comes into play. I think Sam Hartman, even if he makes a couple mistakes here and there, I think he's going to make the plays he needs to make late in the game for Notre Dame to win. I already gave out the prediction, 2 touchdowns from Wojciak, and I do think we're going to get that. I do think we're going to get that deep ball from Tobias Merriweather. I can't promise a touchdown, but I think he's going to go up and catch a deep ball. It's going to be important in this game. And lastly, I took 31-20, which means Notre Dame's probably going to kick a field goal. I think Spencer Schrader, the transfer kicker from South Florida, he's going to get on the board this season. He's going to convert on a field goal because I keep saying it, we're going to need him at some point, one of these big games, and let's get him warmed up now so that when that moment comes, our heart rate isn't too high and we have a little bit more confidence in our guy, Spencer Schrader, to knock one in. All right, that's going to do it for this episode. Thanks again for making Locked On Irish your first listen each and every day. For the everyday listeners out there, I'll have more on the NC State game tomorrow in my first crossover episode of the season. I'm going to be on with a Locked On Wolfpack host, so you'll be able to hear both perspectives, and it should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. Before you head out, please subscribe on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the podcast and follow the show on social media. You can find us on Twitter at Locked On Irish, on Instagram at Locked On Irish Pod, and my personal Twitter is at Tyler, WOJCIAK. I'll see you guys tomorrow.